I know the 2-year anniversary is technically tomorrow, but if I upload then, my normal viewers will be confused since it's not normally one of my upload days and they'll end up missing out on the video. So the channel's birthday vid is coming out today, on my mother's birthday. Happy birthday, Mom. For the longest time, I've realized that a lot of my What's the Best lists can't remain the same. As time moves on, new figures come out, and I back collect a little more. And sometimes, honestly, figures will decline in my opinion over time. Either new versions will come out that will show me that I've been overvaluing something, or I'll just like it less and less the more I handle it. Or hell, it might even come up in my good graces as I see how bad things can get, or come to appreciate or realize things that I didn't know about the figures I've had for so long. And while I always try to be as objective as possible in these, especially with the earlier WTB videos, I hadn't nailed down my formula to best allow me to do that. So sadly, much of my earliest entries in this series are the ones that aged the worst. Both because I had the most time to acquire more, but also because I allowed my opinion to infect them the most. I didn't even have a true grading rubric back when I started. I was really mostly just going off of what I thought was stuff people couldn't argue with being quality. So I've been wanting to redo some of these for a long time now. But I also feared that doing it would make you all think that I was running out of characters for these lists. But this had to happen at some point, and I realized that I probably had no better time to do it, and no better video to remake, than the first What's the Best on the channel's second birthday. I mean, the original version of this video was before I even included the category of accuracy to the classic interpretation of the character. And while that is a contentious one for a lot of you, if you remember, I did lament how hard it was to figure out what the best Megatron is because of how many different alternate forms he has. So in trying to find out what the definitive Megatron is, it is made a lot simpler by grading on accuracy. Anyways, welcome to What's the Best? What's the Best Megatron 2? The Revengeing. First up, I'm not going to include the RID 2001 Bludgeon. We all know it loses. Besides, I need to shorten this up in some way since last time I've added 6, technically 7 new Megatrons to the collection. Remember how in the Optimus Prime What's the Best I was like, oh my god, I have 11 Optimus Primes, how will I ever do this? Seems quaint now. I've more than doubled the number I once had. Titan's Return Megatron. A cool looking, if not the most accurate rendition of the character, going for that G1 style but missing it by a fair margin because of its nature as a retool. Posability is average for Titan's Return, so behind the times for today's standards, but not by as much as you'd think. This is also a mixed bag on quality. It's got decent plastic, and what paint's there is fine, but a lot of this thing is covered in stickers, and these are some crappy stickers. Transformation is really good, and the alt modes are too. I've said it before, and I'll say it again, if you aren't making a gun Megatron, the next best thing is a triple changer jet and tank Megatron. Next up, the Siege. This is kind of one of those figures that soured on me over time, which is impressive because it wasn't doing that great to begin with. This is just not fantastic, like, at anything. It's barely good at anything. It looks like Megatron more than the last one, but like a squatter, wider Megatron, with a hole in his wrist and a huge backpack. As for quality, he's got a gammy ankle, and that's like the story with every Siege Megatron ever. Posability is the worst kind of average, whereas most War for Cybertron figures had most of their joints be average, and tended to have 1 or 2 be great. Megatron here is literally nothing but average or below average joints. Transformation is like a 4 out of 10, just barely bad enough to not be bland. And the alt mode is an H-tank, the easiest kind of tank ever. Again, it gets some leeway for being a space tank, but it honestly shouldn't. This isn't a space tank, therefore they made it into an H-tank. It's a space tank, therefore they didn't bother putting more effort into it in order for it to not be an H-tank. The difference is that it comes from a place of laziness. Combiner Wars Megatron. Now the one I have here is the Armada one, but we are going to use this as a totem for the G1 version, and we are already looking a lot better. This may be middlingly accurate to the Armada version, but the alternate version is more accurate and better looking than the Siege figure, with its only downside being the cannon. Posability sure is worse here, but like, so what? That was boring. This is even more so. It's not really a big change. Transformation is way better here, actually being fun and having some cool moments. Plus, it never once tries to pinch the shit out of my hands like the Siege. And the all mode is a fantastic tank, shaming the Siege with its laziness and cheapness. Next up, this one's obviously going to be the worst one. Spoiling it now, everyone. Red Megatron. Fuck this thing. Fuck it so hard. Fuck the whole red line. Cancel it already, Hasbro. This is one of the worst things you've ever done. I know you're rolling in Magic the Gathering money right now, so you're insulated from bad monetary decisions, but the red line is nothing but a money sink. I'm almost convinced at this point that the line is supposed to suck so it can be a tax write-off. The only thing good about the Megatron I have is the deco, and that's not even accurate to the scene it's supposed to be from. It's just kind of reminiscent of it. Otherwise, this is a disproportionate Megatron with blade-thin biceps and a weird overall build that poses badly, especially for what it's trying to be, is built like crap, is easily damaged, and does literally nothing else. This is trash, and yet it is probably the best this stupid line has ever done. Get rid of red already, Hasbro. Next up, MMC Tyrantron, or Autobot Megatron. I'm gonna be honest, when I made my first What's the Best Megatron, I didn't really know who MMC was yet. I did not realize that they were going to become my favorite third-party company. So it's super hilarious to me that the first figure I ever experienced from them was perhaps the least like the rest of the company's typical production. This is easily MMC's most beautifully decoed figure ever, when MMC doesn't usually pay much attention to deco. They do enough to get the job done, and that's the deco. This is one of MMC's most awkwardly posing figures, better than average for most companies, but still weird. This has the worst QC I've ever seen MMC do, with the broken wrist and scuffs on the shoulder. This has the most accessories I've ever seen from MMC, giving you enough to turn this into an entirely different version of the character. Like, this is bordering on X-Transbots territory with the accessories. This is the worst transformation I've ever handled from MMC, who again are famous for their amazing transformations, and this has parts forming. It's funny to me now though that back when I did this video the first time, I complained so much about this, even when I experienced so much worse than this, even at the time. And then the alt mode is just ever so barely a thing, but he didn't even have one in the comics, so what am I complaining about? Kingdom Baby Megatron. Honestly, looking more like Megatron than the Siege version. He does have some pauldrons he didn't on that figure, but overall I'd say the kibble quantities on him have gone down. This is obviously compromised by being a core figure, but it's still doing an impressive job. Posability here is better than on some larger figures despite its size. And the transformation is too. This manages to be less of an H-tank than the thing it's a downscaled retool of, and it's just fun. Alright, Masterpiece Megatron. This is the other figure that soured on me over time, and I already rated this thing pretty poorly. But while I wasn't happy with it before, I've since kind of come to hate it. This looks accurate to the stupid fucking sunbow chart that people should throw away because it was never right at any point ever. But it's not all that correct for the character as he was shown in the show because the proportions are fucked straight to hell. The quality is trash, and I'm sick of people telling me that mine has to be a knockoff. 1, knockoffs in this fandom are actually good, not garbage like this, and 2, I already told you all, I did literally everything possible to authenticate this, and it all checks out. Even the way the serial number is stamped into the box in a soft, hard-to-read print is how the official one would be. So as best as anyone would be able to tell, this is either official or the most convincing knockoff of all time where they went out of their way to be literally indistinguishable from the official product when this was being sold online. And most of these details would only matter to someone with an encyclopedic knowledge of how the box is supposed to turn out. So it would be a lot of expended effort to trick 0.001% of their potential audience. This is official, people, and it's crap that broke multiple times in serious ways. Posing is good, but fuck this thing. Transformation is heinous, fuck this thing. And the alt mode is a great representation of the Megatron gun mode, but it's broken, fuck this thing. Lastly, of the stuff that I covered in the first video, the Wei Jiang Megamaster. This thing absolutely deserved to win the first time, but I shouldn't have counted the price in its favor, as if this is a list of what the definitive Megatron is, the definitive Megatron for the best price shouldn't factor in. It should just be, what's the best one, period, end of story. So, this looks both proportional and accurate, the most of any of the figures so far in both categories. It's a large figure made of durable materials, though limited paint. Its posability is really on the order of what would be considered normal for a War for Cybertron figure, kind of like Siege Megatron, but in a good way. Transformation, amazingly for a gun Megatron, is not cancer. I mean, I rarely choose to do this for fun, but when the alternative is often MP Megatron for these kinds of things, I'm happy with this. And the alt mode is pretty good. There are some flaws stemming from the fact that this didn't come with all the accoutrements to turn it into a full-fledged man from Uncle Mega Gat, but this is a solid effort. Its biggest flaw to my mind is the fact that it's just oversized. Alright, time for the stuff you guys didn't know I had. I'm going to introduce both of these at the same time. Magic Square Doomsday and Newage comic book style Agamemnon. Why am I doing this? Because I want to say that both of these figures, the Magic Square especially, but both of these come with a nightmarish number of accessories that I'm not going to cover. I will say that the Magic Square's box is about a dozen times bigger than it has to be to contain it all, while the Newage houses a ton in a lot less space. And look, if we're talking accuracy to the classic interpretation of Megatron, nothing in this video touches the Magic Square, and nothing that comes after this is going to touch it either. This is by far the most accurate Megatron I've ever seen, with the least kibble. There's almost not a speck of it on this guy. The Newage, on the other hand, has a pretty nasty backpack, and it's based on the comic version of the character. At least, the one I have here is. So while I guess that's a classic interpretation of the character, it's not really what I mean by the term. So why is it that I like this a ton more? Well, it probably has something to do with the fact that it's built about a quintillion times better, and the transformation is good, while the Magic Square is literally worse than the Masterpiece on that front. Honestly, the Newage would look accurate enough if I got the normal version. I just thought that since I was getting both of these at the same time, specifically just to make this sequel video even better, I may as well go for something new in the looks department to make it interesting. And this is a pretty sexy deco, not going to lie. But yeah, Magic Square is a nightmare to handle. And here's the thing. I'm not actually going to transform this for this video. No, really, this is where I draw the line. There is a step in there that gets so stuck that I was sure I was going to break it to try and transform it back into robot mode. And after I miraculously got that part free after hours of working on it and damaging the figure in the process, I vowed to never transform this again. It's not like I did something wrong, there's just an incredibly powerful peg that goes into a location where you lose all leverage on it, and you have to flex a different part to try and unstick it. Even if that part worked, it would be a bad transformation. Just too much effort, too many small breakable parts, too much flexing plastic into place, not enough solidity when you're done. It looks right when you're finished, but the process for getting there is just not worth the effort, especially when it may mean that you can never get it back into robot mode again. Posability on this is pretty good, but it's really just down to his joints having more range than normal. He doesn't have any specialty joints. The Newage, on the other hand, has about the same range in most of his joints, and he has a few specialty joints like an ab crunch and forwards butterflies, even if they are slight. Plus, his transformation is actually pretty decent, being one of the better ones here, and it's easy to get back into the normal mode. Plus, its alt mode is about as good as any of them. The colors are a bit off, but that's just because of the version I chose. The other Megatron may look a lot more accurate, but this one has its own kind of cool, and it's a lot more fun. Though, the barrel extension for the alt mode is at insane risk of stripping the paint off of his normal gun barrel. Make Toys Despetron. I had the option to buy this a long time ago, and I passed that up because I was a little worried that a check wouldn't clear soon enough for my liking. And I regret that delay immensely. This thing kicks ass. It's got some line die-cast in it, and I obviously don't care much for that, but that's probably the biggest negative of this figure for me. Accuracy to the classic interpretation of the character is pretty good here, but this isn't in the upper echelons of this list because this is a mildly stylized take. I feel like this is an amalgamation of different versions of Megatron, and it kind of gives me some Dreamwave vibes if I'm honest. That's not to say this is inaccurate, it's just that there are more accurate figures on this list. Posability also isn't the best out of the group. Outside of having more sass than the rest of the figures in his head waggle, and some deep joints in all of his limbs, he's pretty much standard on the articulation front. His deco is absolutely one of the nicer ones, being very shiny, and I do appreciate the fact that this is the only guy to get rubber feet to help him stand more steadily on a table. But his knees can sometimes collapse when you don't want them to, largely due to the weight of the stupid die-cast, and then this part did break off. The glue just failed, and that part plugs in anyways, so it's not all that ruined, you can just slot that back in, but it does take a few points from the build of this figure. However, where this thing shines is the transformation. This is not just the best Megatron transformation I've ever handled, this is one of the best transformations I've ever handled. This is the only one of these figures in this entire video where I will look at it on my shelf and just get the impulse to transform it right here, right now, just for fun. It's brilliant and it's intuitive. I'm not lying when I say that I transformed this thing for the first time without using directions in 7 minutes, and it was a joy every second of that. Allow me to reenact my reaction to this transformation as close as I can possibly mimic it. Okay, so if this goes here, yeah, and then if that goes there, then that means that this, yes, alright, and then if there's space for that here, then now this, yeah, and if that goes here, then this goes there, and then that's there, and yeah, alright. I'm not kidding about that. I sounded like a lunatic the whole way through. And then the gun mode sure is that classic Megatron gun mode. I'm gonna be honest, most of these gun guys do this almost exactly as well. It's really just down to who's got the best accessories to make it the most accurate. And lastly, yeah that's right, it's Bold Form's Gladius. I'm such an idiot. I bought this thing because it hurt my soul what happened to that husband and wife team who designed this. And I wanted to set the record straight. I wanted to review this thing and tell everyone that the hate was all an overreaction, and that it wasn't that bad, and that it was a crime that that company was killed in the cradle how it was. Then I got my copy, and it's so mismanufactured that neither of the arms can rotate forwards, and I can't even get it into its alt mode. I actually broke out the directions and followed them step by step to make sure I wasn't doing anything wrong, and I just can't get the clearance to make this thing come together in either mode. The parts just won't stick together. Nothing will hold shape. I can do like 90% of this, but the last 10 where everything locks together and it stops being a wet noodle just won't happen. And the transformation from what I experienced was actually kind of fun. I liked it. But the materials just don't work with you. And what I'd say is that this figure suffers from two problems. An overabundance of ambition. The designer of this really should have just made this have one alt mode. The added complexity of the other mode just exacerbates problem two, which is that this was probably made by a factory who didn't have any business making it. Like, the material chosen for this screams that the people who should have known better either didn't warn the designer, who likely had no background in manufacturing, that the plastic wasn't good for this application, or more likely, this plastic was foisted on the designer with promises that, oh yeah, this will totally do what you need it to. Ultimately, the problem with this thing don't lie in its sculpt, which I actually kind of like. It's got a good flair to it, or the complexity of its engineering, but the fact that the plastic just doesn't hold up to the rigors of its duty. I can't review any other aspect of this. The posability is fucked because the manufacturing is so bad, and the transformation is impossible because the manufacturing is so bad. So, what's the best? You may think that I'm going to make the worst be the Bold Form's Gladius, but you'd be wrong. It's Red Megatron. This thing set its sights so low, and it still failed. Then it's the Gladius. So much ambition failed by such bad materials. Even if it weren't though, this wouldn't be doing great due to its general inaccuracy, and the fact that even if the posability weren't broken, it wouldn't be great at it. Then I'm going to go with the masterpiece. The accuracy is borked because of the proportions, the transformation is cancerous, and it breaks. Fuck it, it doesn't deserve better. Then I gotta go with the Magic Square, which kind of hurts me because I love their Prime so much. But this thing is the only one that I flat out refuse to transform. Not because I couldn't do it, because I could, but simply due to the fact that it is so bad in general, and that one step is so much worse than that, I will never do it again if I have a choice. In all other regards, it's excellent, or at least normal. Next up, the Siege. It's decently accurate, it poses okay, it transforms a little badly, and its alt mode is very wrong and lazy. Then you got the CW. It poses badly, but it looks better and transforms way better than the Siege, and the alt mode, while not accurate, is a good version of what it's trying to be. Then the Titan's Return. A little lacking on the accuracy, but solidly cool looking, acceptably posable, quality is decent, and a good transformation for two great alt modes. Then the Kingdom Megatron. Decent at pretty much all things, though lacking in accuracy for the alt mode. It's got no real weaknesses when compared to the competition beneath it. MMC Megatron. It is crushing it at being the version of Megatron it wants to be. It poses better than the majority of its competition, transforms better than most of it, and the alt mode is acceptable. Next up, yeah, this is how much this list is changing. The Wei Jiang. It is accurate, it is quality, It transforms pretty good, it looks good enough in alt mode, though it's definitely the wrong type of gun, but that's in the face of the unique toy's Agamemnon, who poses better, transforms better, is higher quality, and has a far more accurate alt mode. And they all lose to the figure that became my definitive Megatron from the moment I first transformed it. The Make Toys Megatron. It is definitely the most stylized of the Megatrons I have here. They intentionally put a flare on this that's not supposed to be there. However, it is accurate enough, and it is still more accurate than a lot of figures based on the fact that they didn't botch the sculpt. It is extremely high quality, using good materials, paint, and hardware, but having a few points taken off for the knees and the glue failing in that one spot. Posability isn't amazing, but it's better than most of its competition, including the Wei Jiang in 3rd place. The alt mode is as accurate as any of these get without all the extra parts forming pieces, but the transformation is a thing of pure divinity. This guy is getting the check or even the check plus on all of his traits. But for his transformation, this is the first check plus plus plus. A Megatron that will make you want to change its modes, not because you want the alt mode or the robot mode right now, but because the transformation is actually fun. However, if you reduce that to the normal check plus, this still wins 1st place. Make Toys Megatron is the best. And that's not half what I have to say, but it's enough what I have to say. And I know you know what everyone else tells you to do at the end of these videos. So, if you liked what you saw here, please do that. And if you'd like to take it a step further, then please share this video with any friend you think may be interested. I hope you all enjoyed listening to me waste your time.